Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip and you're watching The Soft Cover, The Print's platform for the launch of select non-fiction books. The book that we're releasing today is actually a special one and very important in the current context. That is the context of national security. I have with me Lieutenant General Kamal Davar, the former, or I should say the first chief of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a tri-service intelligence agency at the services headquarters in New Delhi. Welcome to The Print, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you, The Print people and Bloomsbury India, for organizing this interview and getting me here to talk about my book.
Congratulations on the book, sir. Before we go further, I would like to show our audience the book. This is the book edited by the Lieutenant General Davar, and it is Securing India's Rise, a Vision for the Future. This book has been published by Bloomsbury. So please do note that I've mentioned this book is edited by the Lieutenant General. So he's done, he's brought together 19 personalities from various fields together to write on this important topic. General, my first question to you would be, how did you manage to get these 19 people to write for you?
Well, that's a very good question. A lot of people ask me that, anthologies, they're not very much in fashion in India. But, since I raised the Defense Intelligence Agency, and after my retirement, I also have been, part of the so-called security circuit. So most of them are my friends. Some I worked with. And there are, out of these 19, I can say 14 are well known to me. And they were very gracious when I approached them. And for them, it takes a lot of effort because they're also very busy people, very, very busy people. They're very eminent people and who have been at the top of their professions. So these 19 authors have contributed a chapter each from their area of expertise and in the areas they've worked all their lives. Actually, all of them have spent a lifetime serving the nation in different capacities. So I'm very grateful to them for contributing a chapter each for this anthology, which I have called Securing India's Rise. Dr. Karan Singh has written, the old philosopher, scholar, statesman. Dr. Karan Singh has written the foreword. I, of course, written the prologue and the epilogue and, edited the whole thing myself. So it was a bit of an effort, a bit of a tiresome effort, I would say. But at the end of the day, I'm very grateful to these 19 eminent gentlemen for having contributed, contributed towards securing India's rise.
Absolutely, General, and it was really good of you that you got these individuals to come together and write. And these 19 personalities, viewers also include Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Ambassador Shyam Saran, former Army Chief, of course, General V.P. Malik, former Navy Chief Admiral Arun Prakash, also along with a whole host of other individuals, including Tilak Deveshwar, Prakash Singh, Atta Hussain, Vikram Sood, and even journalist Seema Mustafa. I read through these chapters, and this book, as I mentioned earlier, comes at a time when India has witnessed its first ever drone attack on a military base. It also comes at a time when India is going through what is perhaps, or I should say, what will be the biggest defense reform, that is the theaterization. So one, the first issue that we'll pick up today is by General V.P. Malik, and he writes on the topic national security decision-making process in India and its trajectories. I recall a recent speech by the Army Chief General M.M. Naramne, who said that while we're talking about digital age, talking about digital army, it is very important to make the decision-making processes simpler, the acquisition processes simpler. So you've headed the DIA, you've served the army for such a long time. Do you think that somewhere this decision-making process needs to be more streamlined and needs to be made simpler?
Yeah. Well, that's a very pertinent question. As you know, General Ved Malik was our army chief during the Kargil operations. So he has conducted operations, at his level, at the army chief's level, with the cabinet community in security, the Raksha Mantri, the prime minister, and whatever. There are always lacunas in every system, and you can always improve every system. So he has come out with his experiences during the Kargil war, where the army was involved, the air force was involved, and the navy, of course, was on the alert.
Yeah.
So there are various problems which crop up during inter-services operations. And of course, at times you have to go to the political authority, which is like the prime minister and the defense minister, to get certain clarifications, whether to use the air force, whether to not use it. For example, if you recall, Prime Minister Vajpayee had clearly said against the air force's recommendations that you will not cross the seas, the line of control. So, well, it is a bit of a dampener on your operational, missions. But you have to, the bigger picture, or the biggest picture, and the biggest responsibility lies with the prime minister of the day. So things like that, so whatever decision making has to be. So as a matter of fact, as you know, then we had the Kargil Review Committee, which came out with various recommendations, which also included setting up of my Defense Intelligence Agency, also
Absolutely.
the chief of the defense staff, also theater commands and things like that, which have been discussed for so many years. The point to note is that that we must improve the system. All the lacunas, as the word you use, which you see in inter-services operations, you must slowly iron them out by discussions, by practical experiences, and by wargaming certain situations which may occur in the future. So what we are now at the moment, you mentioned about the chief of the defense staff in your introductory talk, in your introductory remarks, and theaterization. So we are at it, and I'm sure we will come out as victors, and as organizations which have actually synergized the capabilities of the army, the air force, and the navy for the national good, for enhancement of the nation's security.
Absolutely, there is no doubt about it, sir. So another interesting chapter that is actually written by Bharat Karnad, in which he talks about the need to revisit India's nuclear doctrine. Now, this book comes out just days after India carried out the successful launch of the new generation of Agni series missile called the Agni P, or the Agni Prime. Now, this missile, as I've reported, brings out a lot of technology, and it is unlike any of the other ballistic missile that India has, or for that matter, any country has. So this has led to a lot of people talking about this weapon as a counter force. Now, while of course India has a no first use policy, there have been murmurs about revisiting this policy, and Bharat Karnad also says that there should be a nuclear first use policy against China. How do you see this, NFU, or the no first use policy? Is it time to revisit it, sir?
It is time to revisit everything to improve your capabilities. You cannot be static. You cannot sort of indulge in the status quo and hope for the best. You see, now I'll tell you, as far as the no first use doctrine for the Indian nuclear forces was concerned, it was after many months and detailed deliberations took place. And I think it was a very wise step to say no first use. Now, no first use does not mean that you are prevented from using your nukes in case required. The no first use is based primarily on an assured second strike capability. So the point is, you have to take, whether in the enemy's strike and then strike him and obliterate whatever value targets you have in mind. I would still say that the no first use has a lot of merit. It has a lot of maturity. And the point is that you also must make in your systems in such a manner that in case any enemy makes the mistake of firing first, well, we should be able to absorb his strike and then take him on in a very, very effective manner. So it doesn't prevent you from firing. But as I had mentioned, please remember that no first use is a doctrine based on an assured second strike capability. And you can only have an assured second strike capability if you've been able to successfully absorb the enemy's strike.
That's a very interesting point that you've made, that no first use policy doesn't actually restrict you from carrying out probably a countermeasure strike if at all there is an intelligence that you are going to be struck. Of the many chapters, at least 3 chapters are dedicated, or I should say focused on one aspect which is there on everyone's mind, which is China. One is, of course, by Professor Shrikant. He talks about facing China's challenges robustly. And then you also have, a chapter by Mohan Guruswamy who talks about India's economic challenges and countering China. And then of course, you also have the former Northern Army commander, Lieutenant General D.S. Hooda, talking about India and the two-front war. This release of this book, again, for the viewers, Securing India's Rise, a Vision for the Future, comes at a time when India and China are engaged in over a year-long standoff in Ladakh. Sir, in your sense, you've been the former DI chief, you've been closely associated with the planning of the military operations planning and all. Where do you see this particular crisis going ahead, sir?
Well, at the moment, I would say it is anybody's guess. The fact is that, as you all know, and according to media reports, there are over 50,000 troops on either side, which are strung along in eastern Ladakh, facing each other. And the Chinese are also not relenting, from whatever mischief they have done. As far as we are concerned, we are all prepared for it militarily, all the 3 services and the government, and that is the political authority. So I don't think the Chinese will be able to make any more headways than the mischief they've already done. However, there can always be a kinetic response from either side. And as you know, our stated position is very clear that please go back to the April 2020 lines or deployments, which the Chinese are not doing, except where in Pangong-so area they moved to Finger 8, and we have also seem to have thinned out from the Kailash range. Now the other areas like Depsang, Gogra, Hot Springs area, and all that. So all there, I'm sure negotiations are going on between the diplomats and the military, of course. And let's hope that some sense prevails. However, the fact remains that the situation can go out of hand anytime. So the answer is that we must, remain ready, have our counter plans also to take on the Chinese and give them an effective answer to the mischief they have done.
So, while of course the standoff is happening, India is also now undergoing what the army chief says is a rebalance from the Western front to the Northern front. This is something that I've argued in the past also, that even when the 1962 war happened, we were at that time too focused on Pakistan as the enemy that we forgot that the China factor is also there. This seems to have been the case now also, where the focus was on Pakistan while China continued to do what it did and gave us an initial surprise. Of course, the Indian forces have countered it and carried out mirror deployment and counteraction. in a way, sir, when you look at things, is the rebalance that is happening from the western borders to the northern, is it something which is important or should have been done long ago, sir?
You see, one thing is there, though we always have spoken about a two-front war, we've spoken about Pakistan, China in concert, in collusion with each other against us. But the fact remains, but somewhere in our psyche, we have been a little more Pak-centric than China-centric. And
Yeah.
one lesson I think we have learned now, definitely, which we all knew about it. It's not that we didn't know about it, but some or the other, we've been a little more perhaps Park centric. And now it is very, I think it's militarily prudent that we are now getting on to being China centric. We have got a fair amount of, as for superiority vis-a-vis Pakistan is concerned. And now we have to bridge the gap between us and the Chinese. And we are doing that. And as you just asked me about this theaterization or the rebalancing in the entire northern sector, right from Myanmar on towards Jammu and Kashmir area, Ladakh included, of course, it's being done. And I'm sure once the theater commands come up, the rebalancing would have taken place as far as the areas of responsibility is concerned, the allocation of forces in each theater is concerned, the deployment, the contingency plans and all that which goes into military planning. So I would just like to allay any fears anybody may have. This rebalancing and theaterization will go a long way in improving our operational capabilities, both against China and against Pakistan.
That's true, and that is something we are hoping for. General, while everybody's written about, the nuclear doctrine, India, Pakistan, China, military front, two-front war, there is also a very important chapter by Samir Saran and Akhil Dio, of the ORF, that is the Observer Research Foundation. And they talk about a new frontier, digital insecurity and India. Now, again, I'll come back to China. While yes, militarily, India has somewhat of catching up to do in terms of the military power of China. But when it comes to cyberspace and space, China is far, far ahead. Sadly so. Would the future wars involve just boots on the ground? Or do you think that, while we focus on the boots on the ground, while we focus on the, latest light tanks and, attack helicopters, is the focus on cyber security there or the cyber warfare?
Yeah, very good question. And your question has relevance for future operations and for the future contours of war. You see, as far as we are the leading IT professionals in the world. We are the best students, youngsters all over. Half of America's IT industry is being serviced by young Indians. Having said that, the as far as the combat capabilities derived from cyber warfare and all, the Chinese have been well ahead since many years. So much so that, as you know, they have penetrated the White House, the Pentagon links, the NASA communication networks and all. And they have a very good capacity of indulging in what we call at times, electronic paralysis, electronic paralysis of systems, whether it's for power generation and by extension of all the links which the aircraft use, or you use for your command and control links and things like that. So they have that capability, they have built this capability, and we have to counter it. There are, of course, we have also taken various measures to both counter their cyber warfare capabilities, both in the offensive and in the defensive domains. So cyber warfare has both offensive and defensive capabilities. So we are also proceeding, and we are proceeding well, I would say. And it won't be correct for me to mention anything more beyond, because all this is laced with confidentiality as it should be. The Chinese, also, we have to be very careful in India, not only to have these defensive countermeasures in place, but also we import a lot of electronic equipment, including for power generation and
Exactly.
communication links and all that. So now your 5G and all Huawei, the networks and all. I'm sorry, the Chinese, since many years, have, transplant what is known, what we call in the armed forces, embedded technologies. So they know what the hell is happening, So things like that. So we must try and discard and not import anything, which has any electronic problems which may occur in the future from China. And it is better to have something below, even if you don't have the latest, but at least it's yours and it is secure. Because whatever comes from China, I'm afraid, has great potential for being, misused and abused.
Well, there is no doubt about that, and I strongly agree with you on this, sir. And since you've spoken about the tech aspect of it, this is all about intelligence gathering. Besides, of course, their offensive capability. And we have a chapter by the former, the RNDW chief, where he talks about that is Vikram Sood, where he talks about emerging security scenarios and the role of intelligence. So you founded the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. You made it work in the initial phases of it. How important is intelligence to the country? And given especially in the army itself, sir, for example, what I've observed is that the MO has always taken the priority over the MI, the military intelligence. Of course, now we have a deputy chief strategy under which under whom both the MO as well as the MI reports to. Is there a balance that is needed, sir? Do we also need to focus on intelligence? The 1971 Bengal Liberation War could happen only because of a fine intelligence setup that we had then, along with, of course, the military capability of it.
Firstly, I must say, before I answer your question, you're well informed. Now I come to, you mentioned about Vikram Sood. Incidentally, when I was raising the Defense Intelligence Agency, Vikram Sood was heading the RNAW, and he was of great assistance to me, while we were raising, and we had no turf wars. One of the people, the people talk about turf wars. Well, I can tell you, IP Singh, the IB under KP Singh, and Vikram Sood heading the RAW itself, there were no turf wars. They were all very, very helpful to me while I was raising the DIA. Now, coming to the importance of intelligence, right from down the ages, intelligence is a very essential ingredient of statecraft. And we also must remember that whenever there is a cataclysmic or a major failure in anything, the first guys, the fall guys, are the intelligence guys. They didn't tell us this. Look, they're not gods. They're also got their resources. They've also they can be gaps in your information. It may be the failure of maybe of command and leadership. It may be a failure of political leadership. It may be a failure in security, just purely security unpreparedness. So you can't blame everything on intelligence. Having said that, intelligence is, as I mentioned, a very, very essential ingredient of statecraft. You cannot, rule or administer a country without proper intelligence, because to be forewarned is forearmed, is to be forearmed. So having said that, but don't expect everything from the intelligence community. The intelligence community works. As I always say, there's no you don't have to beat your drums that you've got this and you've got that. Intelligence, you have to be very silent practitioners of your art and the science of intelligence. Having said that, we over the years, for example, you can say there have been many lapses as far as intelligence is concerned, of course, and let's accept it. But over the years, we have also taken many measures to ensure that wherever there were any gaps in intelligence, whether technical, whether in human, things like that, electronic intelligence, this, that, and the other, we have taken steps and we are reasonably well off. And both the armed forces, that is the Defense Intelligence Agency, which coordinates the work of the Army, the military intelligence, as you mentioned, Air Force intelligence and the naval intelligence, they all work in unison. And also they work in unison with the IB. They also work in unison with the RNAW, with the NTRO, and things like that. So don't worry, but as I said, we have to keep sharpening and honing our skills. There
Well,
is
that's
there is no limit. There is no limit to improving our skills, and I'm sure we are doing that.
Well, I'm absolutely sure of that. And for the viewers, I must remind you, while of course, the failures of the intelligence agencies is often reported, is often spoken about. We all know. Trust me when I say this. There are numerous successes that never come out, and these successes never come out is because the information coming out actually jeopardizes any future operations, and that is why many of us are not even though might be aware, we don't report it, and many of us would not be aware also of the successes that has taken place. Uh, so, among all this military, the vision for the future of securing India's rise, there is a very important chapter, and this chapter is written by Brigadier Sukhjit Singh, and the chapter is on education and new trust. So, just tell our viewers about, so why is education so important for securing India's future? We have the arms, we have weapons, we have nuclear weapons. Why education?
That's a very fine question. British Sukhjit Singh, incidentally, is, the former Maharaj of Kapurthala and
Yeah,
an old MVC. He's an MVC of the 71 war. And now he's also been, after retirement, involved very deeply with education in the Punjab. He's been doing it as social service, really speaking.
yeah,
And I'll tell you, this book, Securing India's Rise, is really about augmenting India's comprehensive national power. Now, what is comprehensive national power? Comprehensive national power is the amalgam or the sum total of all your capabilities, whether it's
exactly.
military, it's your economic, your economic strength, it's your industrial base, it's your technology base, it's your indigenous industry, it's your population, it's your medical infrastructure, it's your, all the roads, whatever you want, and also your education. After all, what is education? Education educates us not only to be good human beings and to make a living, but also to contribute to society, also to contribute to your nation's growth. So education is a very, very important ingredient of comprehensive national power. And some of the other certain, I would say, regions in India, we have done very well as far as the growth of education is concerned. After all, if India exports, one of India's constituents of soft power is what? Is your IT professionals, your other professionals who are now working abroad and working so well and bringing and getting India a great name. And similarly, as they work this thing, but we have been a poor country for centuries, and some of the fruits of education or the fruits of independence have not reached the common man. There's a lot of hunger, deprivation, want, poverty, and last few years, as you've been watching all this, whatever has happened. So our economics, we have gone down somewhere or the other, and pandemic has made it a little more worse. Having said that, so how do you bridge the gap? How do you bring a person out from, a tribal from the middle of the most dense jungle in the world, and you get him out to work? So you have to provide him education. And that is where British Sukhjit has gone into various aspects, how to get the fruits of education to the most common, most deprived man in the country. So that is the essence of education. We must, when you talk of freebies, if I had my way, the first freebie would be having great schools in each block, in each panchayat, have a reasonable school, in each block have a good KV, Kendriya Vidyalaya type, and get people out of ignorance, and you'll find that India will grow.
Absolutely. And you rightfully mentioned that, while the focus, every time we talk about power, the focus has been on military, has been on arms and, ammunition, acquisitions and all. The actual focus should be actually on comprehensive national power. There is no doubt about it. And one of the aspects of the comprehensive national power is, of course, the media. And there is a chapter, very interesting chapter, I should say, by Seema Mustafa, very senior journalist. And she talks about Indian journalism, the fourth pillar of our democracy, with, of course, a question mark. So how do you see the media?
Well, that's a very fine question. I totally agree with you that it is the fourth pillar of our establishment, beyond doubt. And you see, what is why is India respected in the world? It is not because we are an ancient and a profound civilization. It is also because since our independence, we have stuck to certain human values which were exemplified by our noble founding fathers and carried on, over the years since our independence. And of course, we've had lots of, ups and downs also. But the fact remains, if you wish to be respected in the world, you have to be not only plural in your approach, in your orientation. You have to sustain democracy. How do you sustain democracy in today's world? It is only if you have a free and a fair media, which says whatever it wishes to say. And naturally, it will, if it is speaking the truth, it will be taken very seriously. And that is where I would say the freedom of the media is an essential ingredient for not only democracy, but for the growth of your country and for your acceptance the world over. And I think the world I would say the world does respect Indian democracy, does respect India's plurality, and appreciates your media. But wherever, if there are any unnecessary curbs if they're ever put on the media, I think it is a self-defeating, very myopic sort of a policy which any government would follow. So I am all for the freedom of the media, for media being a bulwark against any form of any ill which prevails in the country.
Well, this is something that, again, I would agree with you 100%. And at the same time, I think, the job of the media is to report. And it's not to please anybody for that matter. Of course, the criticism would, of course, be there. But it's very important to keep, to report what it believes is the truth. Thank you, General, for, bringing together this book. This has been a wonderful read. And I'm sure, for our viewers, they will order it, they'll read it, and really understand the true essence of what needs to be done, for securing India's rise. And, as this conversation brought about, this is not just about military. There are multiple facets to, a comprehensive national power, which includes education, which includes media, which includes the civil society, which includes the military, of course, and the political leadership. So once again, viewers, this is Securing India's Rise, the vision for the future, written by, of course, edited by, of course, Lieutenant General Kamal Davar, Bloomsbury publication. Thank you so much, General, for speaking to ThePrint. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure and my privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.